I'm looking today at 2 Peter chapter 2, Peter's letter or letters in the New Testament raise some quite important issues, and he has quite a strong and pretty fierce conversation with those reading the letter when he talks about false teachers. And one of the things Peter is very passionate about and quite straight about is those who draw others away from truth, those who suck them into error and deception. He's not talking about people who are mainstream Christians who are living as best they can to follow Jesus, but he's talking about those who've got really damaging motives and destroy people's integrity and throw them off the path to following Jesus in a pure and honest and integral way. And this is what Peter says, the great apostle Peter, chapter 2, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 15. It talks about some of these people. They have wandered off the main road and have gone astray, because they are prophets who love profit, the wages they earn by wrongdoing. They are following the example of Balaam, son of Beor, who was rebuked for evil by a donkey incapable of speech, yet that spoke with a human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. The story of Balaam, we're told in the Old Testament, is about a person who's paid to effectively to curse the Jewish people, and God sort of takes over the situation and he ends up blessing them. But he's a man really who's doing it for money, and his motivation is what's he going to get out of it financially. That's what sends him off on this mission. We can often have quite mixed motives in life. Finance is a big one, and finance can sway us quite a lot, can't it? We're desperate for the work, so we perhaps don't act as honestly and with as much integrity as we should do in order to get the job. We get paid by somebody, and so we sort of don't follow through with our conscience in the way that we ought to. And it's very easy for that to become even worse when we're talking about religious things. People can be paid by an organisation, by a church, or something like that, but they might not be living the life. And there's quite a challenge there. Not easy to be in some form of paid ministry or paid Christian work or paid for their religious duties, and yet what happens on a bad day? How do you deal with that? And I think honesty and integrity before others is important. I remember a time when I was doing some work for a Christian organisation, and I was actually acting as a volunteer, but I was getting some support from various friends helping me to have the time freed up to do this work. And I was really grateful during that season. God was really blessing me. There was financial provision coming through some various friends that gave me some time. So I was only working part-time in a cafe. The rest of the time I was doing quite a lot of work for this Christian organisation. And I did come to a point where I was struggling with certain things in my life. And it was very exciting to be involved with this Christian project, but I was also aware that there were areas in my life that were not right and where I was deeply struggling. And I felt like it was a bit of a battle really going on. And I was also concerned that people were looking up to me, and they will do if you are in some kind of formal position of leadership within Christian work or Christian ministry or within a church, whether you're a pastor or something like that, or whether you're just put forward to others as an example. And I was aware of some of these areas that I felt there was a real flaw in my character. And I actually spoke to the guy leading the organisation at the time in the UK, and I said, look, I just really want you to pray for me. I was very honest with him with one or two things that I felt weren't right in my heart, and areas that I felt really quite bad temptation around. And I wanted to be open and clear about it and deal with it. I could see how I was getting drawn away from my pure relationship with Christ, and it's very easily done, isn't it? And although I could have carried on and nobody would apparently have noticed, I thought there's an integrity issue going on here, and it's very, very scary, and it's very disheartening when people, perhaps in a more formal position, or certainly with some notoriety in terms of their Christian faith, a place of influence, when they suddenly fall and collapse. And it's very disheartening too when you find out, like the situation like Balaam, where someone's apparently doing religious duty, but their motivation is all mixed up and clearly not healthy. And God really had to deal with him because he was heading off in the wrong direction. It was really opposing God, opposing God's purpose at that time. Just paid to do these things using that spiritual sensitivity to bring curses. And actually God said, no, that's not going to happen. I've decided that I'm going to change the way things are right now, and I'm going to work in such a way that you can't help yourself but speak blessings, and I'm going to confront you as well. And he used this humble beast of burden, this donkey, to basically push Balaam right against the wall. So he hurt his leg quite badly, and the donkey, least likely mouthpiece, spoke up and rebuked him and challenged him. So God can use anybody or anything to challenge areas when things are not right. And it's not that we want to just rail off and start condemning people in leadership or people who perhaps have got a public position in Christianity. We're not there to just take pot shots at people. But where something is profoundly not right, it's also important to voice it and for it to be said, and to use wise channels, how we might do that sometimes, of course, as well. But to be a whistleblower, to be somebody who flags up something that isn't right and that needs to be challenged. So I pray that we would have that wisdom, and we would also be able to be examples of integrity and honesty and purity, particularly for those of us who have a position of responsibility, of influence and of leadership, whether paid or unpaid. We would be people who carry that with great wisdom and with a proper respect for the Lord, the one who's put us in that position of influence as well.